Slumberland was directed by Francis Lawrence. It stars Marlo Barkley and Jason Momoa, and I'm very excited to give you guys my review for this movie. If you've seen it, be sure to leave a comment of what you thought about it. As well, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get into this review. In this movie, a young girl discovers a secret map to the dream world of Slumberland, and with the help of an eccentric outlaw, she traverses dreams and flees nightmares with the hopes that she'll be able to see her late father again. So overall, this was a fairly fun movie. I'd say I enjoyed it for the most part. It is a bit of a mixed bag, unfortunately, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. It's a fun adventure fantasy movie. And this movie, I thought, had a lot of emotional beats to it that I wasn't really expecting. Like part of this is the young girl Nemo searching to see her father who recently passed away. She's wanting to see him in the dream world in Slumberland, and there's a lot more emotion to that. Maybe not always for searching for the father, but certain things with that storyline of the father who had passed. There were parts of it that were quite emotional, more than I thought they were going to be, especially with the uncle in this movie. There were some emotional moments, and for me, this movie was full of emotional moments and fantasy elements, and when it came to all the emotional stuff, I thought it handled it very well, and I think it hit all the beats it was trying to hit. When it comes to the fantasy stuff, that's where the movie's a bit more of a mixed bag for me, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, when it comes to the emotional stuff, I thought it was great, and I'm just really surprised at how great I found the emotional aspects of this movie just working for me. The actress Marlo Barkley plays Nemo, the lead of this movie. She did a great job. I thought she was great in this. Jason Momoa was really fun in this as well, very charismatic in his role. He's sort of a wacky character, but I thought he did a really good job. I thought the two worked really well together. And there's a part of this movie with the uncle, who's the brother of her father, who passed away, and there's some very nice emotional moments with that. And honestly, when this movie was over, my biggest takeaway were the moments not in the fantasy parts of this movie, which it's great that the non-fantasy parts, a lot of them worked really well with the emotional beats. But that's kind of its biggest weakness as well, where the fantasy aspects not the most memorable part of this movie, and it doesn't need to be an either-or situation for me. I would hope for both of them to be great. And there's definitely fun moments in the fantasy portions where they're going through the dreams or run away from nightmares. There's some fun moments for sure, but there are times when it's like, okay, they were doing some creative things with the dreams, and there are other times it's like, you may have been able to go wackier if you wanted to, considering how weird dreams can be sometimes. But also part of it was there's a few things that just weren't making sense. Like there were certain rules that they set up where you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, that works. And then there are other things where they weren't really discussing it, it was just happening. And I don't want to go into spoilers because it's still a fairly new movie, but it just wasn't making all that much sense with, you know, when the main character would wake up from where they were in Slumberland and then go back. Just the things that were happening when she went back, it sort of like didn't make sense that they were happening. If you've seen the movie, you may know what I'm talking about, like, 'cause I don't really want to spoil it. And then Jason Momoa's character, I enjoy his character, but there's a twist with his character that I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing there, but there's also part of it which is like, wait, what? If this is how this works, shouldn't his character not actually exist? But so yeah, that I may have missed something because I was watching it late at night. But yeah, there are parts of the fantasy aspects that just weren't making sense. I don't think they thought all of it through, unless I just missed stuff that I just didn't pick up and everything. It just wasn't always making sense. And there are just typical tropes in this movie that are in a lot of those fantasy adventures with young kids as the leads, are like a never-ending story and stuff like that. And one of the tropes is, the parent passing away and wanting to see that parent one last time. I feel like that's done quite a bit, and it's done well in this. I thought it was anyway. And the final moments in the fantasy parts of this movie were quite nice, quite heartwarming, I thought. But yeah, I thought there is fun in the fantasy portions, but just times it's like they could have gone further with it. There were times when it just wasn't making all that much sense, and just compared to the emotional beats that were mostly not in the fantasy portions of this movie, I just didn't feel like it was on the same level. Like, it's fun, but not particularly memorable compared to some other stuff in this movie. So yeah, that's where it was a bit of a mixed bag. If you just turn your brain off, it's fun, but there's other parts just like, does that really make sense? So overall for me, I do enjoy this movie. It is a bit of a mixed bag still, just some of the fantasy elements just weren't quite working. I don't think it was quite as memorable or as exciting as it could have been, but it was still fun, even if some parts just weren't making sense. But I thought this movie hit all the emotional beats. It worked for me with the emotional beats anyway. The performances I thought were all really good. And yeah, the characters there's some fun characters in this. So yeah, overall I mostly enjoyed this movie. I would give Slumberland a 65%. So guys, if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about this movie. As well, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for some more reviews coming soon. My next review is going to be License to Kill, the next movie, my James Bond movie review, so stay tuned for that. And until then, take care everybody.